Hello guys, Appa here. Today we're looking into Kamigawa Neon Dynasty and the new cards for the Pauper metagame. We're looking into the top 7 cards I believe will make an impact into the format. And yeah, that's basically it. I was thinking about making an honorable mentions, but the set is really loaded. There are a lot of really interesting commons. So I think that you could make an argument for almost every common in the set. So to keep things clean, I'm going to just do the top 7 and go into that. So without further ado, let's start with Number 7, Tamiyo's Safekeeping. This card is a 1 green mana for an instant. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, and you gain 2 life. This is really interesting as a sideboard card, I believe, because it basically protects everything you have except yourself and gains some life to boot. So against, for example, burn, you can just use it as a 1 mana gain 2 life and protect maybe one of your creatures from a removal spell, which is basically a great magic card, 2 for 1 against burn. Against any other aggressive deck, you can gain combat and maintain tempo just for 1 mana, and it has a lot of applications, for example countering land destruction and all that. So I believe this card, even though it's not going to be in the main deck, I don't think it will be playable in the sideboard of some amount of decks that maybe rely on a couple of cards or want to counter land destruction. I think that's kind of interesting, and I think this is the first ever permanent, instant in green that protects any permanent that we have in the format, but I might be incorrect, and also it's just 1 mana, so really interesting. Number 6, we have Coiling Stalker. This is a 1 and a green for a snake ninja creature, and you can also ninjutsu for the same cost, 1 and a green. And when it deals combat damage to a player, you put a counter on target creature you control that doesn't have a counter on it. So this card is really strong because if you can enable early, you will be throwing a lot of counters around and your board will grow a bit. It's not going to make one creature like impossible to beat. It's going to more or less like distribute the counters across the creatures. But in Stompy it may be playable. It can also be useful with ETBs or leave the battlefield triggers. I'm not sure if there are many in green, but we never had ninjutsu, so this is kind of new territory. But like you can bounce like a Nest Invader or something, one of those creatures that when it enters put a counters on any creature, things like that. But you probably want to play this card without many other things that put counters on creatures. But still, it's pretty strong, and it can also kind of combo with persist creatures, and that's kind of cool too. I'm not sure if this card will make the cuts in decks, but basically it's a 3/2 for 2, which is pretty strong and has upsides and it has ninjutsu, so it has a lot of going on. So I really wanted to showcase it a bit. I'm not sure if it will make it or not, but really cool card. Number 5 we have Muktai Ambusher, another ninjutsu. This is 3 and a black for an artifact creature rat ninja, and it's a 3/2 with lifelink, but you can ninjutsu for 1 black. Now, this card doesn't look that special, basically, it has way less text, but the cool thing about this card is that it's a lifelink creature that's efficient and has ninjutsu. Black in Pauper, you have like mono black, for example, that has a lot of creatures, a lot of value creatures, and struggles with the life total. We've seen very kind of inefficient cards being played that gain life for those decks, like Tendrils of Corruption that gains life, but it's like a 4 mana spell, and yeah, spells like that. And we also seen cards like Unexpected Fangs being played because it gains life and it's kind of not great. This card also synergizes with, for example, value creatures. It can also be played in like blue-black Fae, where you can bounce your Fairy Seer and get an efficient beater, because 2 mana for a 3/2 lifelink is pretty good. But yeah, I'm not sure if this will be in the main deck, except the meta goes bananas and everyone is playing burn or something. But in the sideboard it will be playable and like a nice addition to the deck. So yeah. Then number 4 we have Network Terminal. This card is probably the worst in the list. By itself, it's a 3 mana artifact. You can tap it for 1 mana of any color, and you can tap 1 mana, tap it, and tap another artifact to loot, to discard, to draw a card and discard a card. This card is mediocre, right? It's kind of a bad impression of a Bonders Ornament, maybe a fixed version of a Bonders Ornament. But why I wanted to showcase this card is because I think it will be played in Tron. Because right now they are playing like Letter of Acceptance or Signets, and they are kind of not great for the deck. And the Manalith really works to fix the mana, especially now that they don't even have Prism. So this really fits the bill, and the ability of drawing a card and discarding a card, even though you need another artifact. In Tron, you normally have a healthy number of artifacts, and looting is more or less what you want. You want to be finding your Muldrifters, you want to be finding your Recursion, so it's going to work well for the deck. Even though it's going to be a worse Bonders Ornament, it's still pretty good, and I think we'll be seeing play probably more than the other that I mentioned before, so I wanted to showcase it a bit. Okay, number 3 we have Mirrorsharecraft. This card is awesome. I love this card, the design of it and all that. So this is 5 blue for an artifact creature crab. It has ward 3. If you don't know what that means, it means that if you target it with a spell ability, you counter it unless the controller pays 3, basically. So it protects, it's like semi-hex proof. And ward 3 means that it basically you spend 5 mana to kill it or something like that. So it kind of trades on mana, and that's kind of cool. It sucks when you pay 7 mana for your beater and then it gets killed for 2 mana, right? So that kind of works for it. It's a 5/7, so it's kind of chunky, but the cool thing about it is that it has a channel ability. Channel is 2 and a blue, discard it from your hand, and you counter a spell ability unless the controllers pay 3 generic mana. This means that you can counter any spell or ability, which is super key. This is the first ever counter that we have. It counters abilities. And interestingly enough, it also counters spells and is very difficult to interact with because it's also an ability, it's not a spell when it's a channel. So this is basically super strong as a counter spell. It's flexible, it's not super efficient. That's kind of the flip side of it, because 3 mana for a counter is kind of bad. But the ability to target any spell, any ability to being uncounterable, and also to have the upside of if you are floating out or if you are playing Tron and you have a lot of mana, you can just play your crab and you know, go to town with a 5/7. Additionally, it has a lot of synergies with, for example, Pulse of Murasa to get it back. You can reanimate it, for example, with Exhume or with Argivian Restoration. I think it's called the Mono Blue Reanimation spell that only reanimates artifacts. And so it could fit into a potential blue-black Exhume deck. I think it fits really well into Tron. It counters any ability. It can counter, for example, the Storm ability. If you don't know how Storm works, Storm is a trigger ability when you cast a spell, so you can actually stop all the Storm copies. So, for example, if your opponent goes for Reaping the Graves, you can just counter the Storm part with this, so they only get 1 creature, which is pretty strong. And yeah, it basically does a lot of different things, and the whole package I think is going to be worth it. I'm not sure how many copies we'll see play. Maybe it's like an automatic 4-off, maybe it's like 1 or 2 on the sideboard, but I believe it's going to be pretty interesting, especially because it can counter any ability. That's really appealing to some decks, right? So you're playing, for example, Cycling Storm, you can counter the trigger ability, the activated ability of Relic of Progenitus to stop them from exiling your graveyard, for example. So it kind of has that play to it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about the crap. Number 2, we have Experimental Synthesizer, I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry, which is a 1 red mana for an artifact, and when it enters or leaves the battlefield, you exile the top card of your library, and until end of turn you may play that card. And additionally, it has 2 red, sacrifice it, create a 2/2 samurai creature token with vigilance, activate on me as a sorcery. So by itself, it's like a card advantage spell, right? Because you can play it, you exile the top card of your library. If it's a land, you can play it too. And if it's not a land, you can cast that spell. And by itself, you know you can just play it, cast the top card of your library. In the next turn, you sacrifice it, create a 2/2, and if you have a lot of mana, you can maybe cast the other spell you have on top. So if you're playing like a very lean deck that has a lot of cheap things, for example, an affinity kind of deck, this works pretty well. You know, you cast it, you exile a Frogmite, and then it costs really cheap, so you cast it, and then in the later game you can just sacrifice it for a 2/2 token that's kind of useful. It's not that expensive to create either, and you get another trigger. So it's really cool with that, just by itself. But the part that really makes me think this card is going to be one of the most played in the format is that it has a lot of really cool synergies. You can sacrifice it to the dispute, for example, to get like the 2 cards from the dispute, the treasure from the dispute, and you can play the card that you exiled, for example, with the treasure that you just created, right? So it's really strong in that respect. If you just cast it and you cast the top card of your library, if you have like a red-black artifacts kind of semi-storm deck, you can, you know, change your spells that way. And if you're just like playing mid-range, you can just wait a bit until you can cast it and cast something else, and then in the next turn you get, you know, you get all of these different flexible lines of play. I think make really interesting. And also another really cool thing is that it works very well with Glinthawk and Korskai Fisher. So you can cast it on, for example, turn 2, try to flip the land. If you don't flip a land, maybe you flip a 1-drop and you can cast it. If you miss that, that's no big deal. Then the next turn you play your Glinthawk, you bounce it to your hand, and you exile another card, and you can go off like that. Basically, if you play that kind of deck, maybe you want to go a bit linear and remove your 4-drops and go more into 1-drops that have like upsides and all that. I think it can be really interesting for the formats. And additionally, you can also like maybe set up the top card of your library if you're playing blue-red, for example, with Brainstorm, and try to exile all green lands. You can do a lot of different things, and it's really cool. So yeah, I think it has a lot of play to it. It's a really interesting card. I just hope it's not going to be like the most broken card ever. You know, if time tells us that, for example, Arcum's Astrolabe, which was a 1-mana cantrip artifact basically in the format, was banned really quickly. So we will see if this is that power level. I don't think so, but it has different play to it. And the thing that it just is not a cantrip, it's just, you know, have to cast the spell, you have to use it that turn. I mean that, you know, it's a bit more proactive than Arcum's Astrolabe, which was a bit more, you know, you can just pass with 7 cards in hand all the time. This kind of forces you to play that much more proactively, and that can be kind of cool for the format. So we'll see how it goes. Alright, at number 1 we have Moon Circuit Hacker. Yeah. This is amazing. This is a 1 blue for an enchantment creature, human ninja. Beware of these enchants. It has ninjutsu for blue, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card unless it enters the battlefield this turn, and it's a 2/1. So this basically means that when it deals combat damage to a player, if you ninjutsu it, then you draw a card, and if you don't, you didn't ninjutsu, you can just loot instead. So this means that the obvious comparison with this card is Ninja of the Deep Hours, and it's difficult to say if it's going to be better, if it's going to be worse, if it's going to be just different, and maybe some decks want this and some decks want Ninja of the Deep Hours. In my opinion, this card is probably better than Ninja of the Deep Hours, at least in the way I normally play Blue-Red Delver or Blue-Red Fae, which is normally my Ninja of the Deep Hours hit once and then they die to a bolt, you know. And this works better for that, because 1 mana means that you can play this and hold the spell scatter or a counter spell on turn 3 instead of on turn 4, and it enables you to use your mana much more efficiently. The difference between 1 mana and 2 mana is not 1 mana, it's twice as much, right? So any spell or any ability in effect that costs 1 instead of 2 is going to be miles more efficient, and that means that you can do a lot of different things. Additionally, bouncing this back with a ninjutsu means that you can re-trigger it later. So it kind of works similar to a Fairy Miscreant in that respect, and it's going to be really strong. It's going to be a bit different how it gets played. Maybe it's more hard casted than Ninja of the Deep Hours. Maybe people bring in these enchants against you. You know, there are a lot of different things. Additionally, it's a 1 toughness creature, so you're a bit more susceptible to sweepers, for example Electricity, but you know, Ninja of the Deep Hours also dies to a sneeze, so it's kind of close. I think, in my opinion, this card is going to be played in tandem with Ninja of the Deep Hours. It's going to be like maybe a 4-2 or 3-3 split, maybe 4-1 in some decks. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this card. I think it's a nice design. Maybe it's too much. We will see in the future, and I'm sure they will ban it soon if it's too if it's too much for the format. we will see if the hacker is better than the ninja. So yeah, that was basically it. Thank you so much for watching. If you think I missed some cards, if you want to post your own top 7, and if you want to insult me in the face, just comment down below. Any interaction is good interaction. So thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.